I'm Chris.
I'm Sandy.
And this is Parenting Autism. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 121 of the Parenting Autism podcast. My name is Chris, and I'm with my wife, Sandy, here. And hi, Sandy.
Hey, honey.
And what do we got on tap for today? Give us a rundown.
Sure. The bullet points for the 5-week recap, because we haven't been on here, include our vacation and some highlights from that.
Where do we go?
We went to Georgia, the Carolinas, and Tennessee.
Okay.
And then we are going to talk about Bryce's recent Special Olympics basketball state competition.
Okay.
We will talk briefly about how Bryce was part of a sermon at church and the impact that had on someone there.
Okay.
And we will talk about Bryce's recent occupational therapy testing and some conversation about why Bryce is still in OT and speech.
Okay.
After 8 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Those are my headlines.
I'm going to start out by mentioning a few countries that our podcast is trending in. Canada is one of them. Peru, Kuwait, and Ecuador.
Awesome.
So those are some countries that we feel like there's a lot of listeners, and we're gaining listeners in those countries. So pretty cool.
That is very cool. I know we have several in Australia too, because I hear from them fairly often.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
I think Kuwait is a city in Iraq. If I'm not, that might not be a country.
I think it's a country.
But thanks for listening over there. And yeah, so and we got a review from Tercete, and she says, "Love you too. So glad I found your podcast. Bryce is lucky to have you. Thank you for sharing your journey with us." So that was very nice. Thank you.
That was very nice, and we're very lucky to have Bryce. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we haven't been on here in a while, and part of that is because we had a nice long vacation, followed by the sickness that we somehow caught on the vacation and has had me down a week and a half and you down about 3 weeks. So
Day 22 for me, and it's...
And you're still clearing your throat.
I think it's giving up.
Good.
Finally.
I'm glad to hear that, because...
Getting back on track.
It's been pretty crazy. So anyway, that's why we haven't been on here, but we'll recap and then we'll see if we can get on a little more often moving forward. Having said that, we really did have a fabulous vacation. I have described it to friends and family as the right balance of experiences and relaxation, which was so nice. We rented a cabin with your brothers. They drove over from Maryland. We drove up from Florida. So there were enough bedrooms and bathrooms to accommodate all of us. Bryce got to spend so much quality time with his aunts and uncles, and it was just really great. And again, we had a lot of cabin time, but then we stayed in Sevierville, Tennessee, which is close to Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg. And so we were off the...
beaten path.
I was going to say it was good. We were kind of out of the way, like in a woodsy type neighborhood, but we were within 20 minutes of anything that we wanted to see and things to do. So it was really, really a great vacation spot.
I think we were in Sevierville, but we weren't like in town.
Exactly.
So we were outside of town.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was just the address. But yeah, it was really nice and peaceful, and we loved it. And the weather was dropped down for a little bit of a cool front, which, being from South Florida, I welcomed being able to put on a sweater again. So it was very nice. I had my boots out. But anyway, so we did some things along the way. We stopped in Savannah and saw an opportunity to do a dolphin tour, which I think I probably enjoyed it more than Bryce did, but it was a lot of fun, especially when the dolphins were jumping in the waves and stuff. But Bryce really enjoyed the boat ride.
Yeah, I think so.
And he saw the dolphins.
He wasn't scared at all.
No, not at all. I think it was a little too much for him to take it all in at once and like know where to look for the dolphins and stuff. But when we played it back on the video, it was cool for him because he really does love dolphins. And so that was a very reasonably priced experience that we really enjoyed, and we had great weather. So that was a fun stop on the way up. Where else? We stopped in Greenville, South Carolina for another pit stop on the way to Tennessee. And in both Savannah and Greenville, we visited a couple of bookstores, took in signed copies of our book, which is Parenting Autism, The Early Years. We signed it. Bryce signed them. We gave those to the buyers. I don't know if those will make it to the shelf. You know, it's part of the marketing. But I'm happy to say that 2 books that we did deliver are on the shelves in Tennessee. So there is one signed copy at His Place Christian Store in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. And it's in a plaza located right behind the Old Mill, which is a highly popular restaurant there in Pigeon Forge. And we have another signed book that is in Cedar Springs Christian Store in Knoxville. So if anybody's in that area and you want a signed copy of our book, we would love for you to go and purchase those.
That just made me think, is it feasible for somebody to buy one of our books through us personally and we sign them and then ship it to them in the United States?
Yep.
That's workable.
It is. Okay. We have some here.
All right. So if you want a signed copy, you can reach out to us through parentingautism@att.net, and you can request a signed copy, and we can send you a link for payment, and then we can get it shipped out to you, priority mail.
Yeah. And if you're out of the country, it's not as easy for us to ship, but you can purchase it through Amazon, and I've got it set up that it can be purchased from any country.
Yeah, just
through Amazon.
Not signed.
Right. But if you want a signed copy, we have some here, so that would be awesome.
Yep. And if you are in another country, we can calculate it and see if it's worthwhile for you to mail it to you. So.
But yeah, we can definitely put that out there, and I do have some copies here. So
okay.
Yeah. So that was fun and exciting on the trip, and I'm shaking off my sales skills. But I had to really tell myself.
I thought you did great.
Thank you. Thanks. I had to keep telling myself, you know what? Don't look at it as sales as much as it is. We were called to do this. Yeah. So how are people going to find it if we don't get it out there?
Yeah.
It's a mission. Yeah. So it's not really like sales for money in our pocket as much as it is a mission to get our story in front of the people who need to read it. There's lots of encouraging scriptures. There's lots of stories that share hope, and we got to get it out there. So that's something that I'm trying to shift my frame of thinking, don't feel awkward about this. It's what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm more of the introvert of us too, and people probably don't see me as an introvert, but I am.
But you are.
And so I really struggle with faces and names, and a lot of times people will see me out in public and say, "Hey, Chris, how are you?" And maybe I've met them once or twice, and I just can't put a name to the face, and it's just my brain. It doesn't something.
You're not the only one. Missing. We've met other people that have the same issue.
So I feel embarrassed, and anyway. So I'm not really the sales.
I know. Well, I was just cold calling. It was crazy, but
yeah,
it was good. It was good. So that was part of the vacation. But once we got to our destination in Tennessee, we did a few things with the Coulters. And one day we went to Apple Barn, which is another really popular hot spot there in Pigeon Forge. So they have a store next to the restaurant. And so we were shopping around in the original barn, And Bryce and I went upstairs, and they had a huge fan up there. And you were on another floor someplace else. But Bryce said, well, I want the fan to work. And I said, well, I don't know how to turn it on. And there was a lady that was working there. And so he went over to her and he goes, excuse me, I want the fan to work. And she's like, well, I don't know how to turn it on. He goes, well, who can do that? And she's like, well, it's the owner. He goes, well, where's the owner? And she's like, well, I think they're down in their office. He's like, well, where is that? So you know what? I just let him lead. And I followed behind, and we go down there, and they had given us the owner, the male owner. But I guess he wasn't there, but his wife was there. And so she came out, but somebody went back and said, there's someone here to see you. And sure enough, the owner came out. And so then Bryce says, are you the owner? Do you own this? And she said, yes. And he's like, I need the fan on. And she's like, the fan? And he's like, yeah, it's a fan upstairs. And so he let her up there. And then when she saw what fan he wanted, she was like, oh, that hasn't been turned on in years. I can't turn that on. Why not? And she's like, well, I don't have the button to do that. I thought you meant a little fan. But anyway, it was a really cute experience. And I thought, good for Bryce. I'm just letting him advocate for himself. And he gets to meet the owner of Apple Barn. And then we got a story, of how her and her husband, that was originally their barn. She was telling him how it used to have hay and animals in it. And then they converted it into a store. And I had given her a business card and told her about our podcast and our book, and at some point if they wanted to have it in their store. But that wasn't my reasoning. I was just letting Bryce approach her.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. And then we go next door, and it's the ice cream place. So then Bryce is like, do you have chocolate ice cream? And she's like, yes. He goes, where? And she's like, what? He goes, how do you get chocolate ice cream? She goes, well, do you want me to show you? He's like, yes. So she took him in the back. And so Bryce and I got a tour of how they make ice cream there. Yeah.
They don't even have tours.
They
and he
don't.
got a tour.
And so he got to see the machine. She showed him how it works. She showed him the freezer with all the supplies. I thought, this kid is just going to learn things because he's asking. And people can see enough that, okay, it's the way Bryce talks and the way he approaches, but they really honor that he wants to learn these things, and he's so cute and curious that they're like, I would love to show him. So it was really, really great. And Bryce is, for those who may be new and haven't listened, Bryce is 10 and a half now, and he's able to communicate pretty well. And, people can understand him enough now, and it's just been really encouraging to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. We still have to work on some polish here and there for him because he can be
rough around the edges.
A little rough around the edges and direct. But he's figuring it out, and it was really exciting.
Yeah.
So I made a couple of notes about that because I thought that was really cool. And again, a lot of the reason we do this podcast is for families that are also newer on this journey and looking for hope. And believe me, when Bryce was 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, we had no clue where we'd be 5 years later. And it's really exciting to see where we are at our journey. But that was great. And then we went to Gatlinburg one day, which we've been to before. And for me, Gatlinburg's a lot of shops, and I did not need to do a lot of shops, nor did you. And Bryce is definitely not interested in a lot of shops. It was the first time for your brothers, so it was good for them and their wives. They could do the shopping, but we went up on a sky lift, and Bryce loves heights. So if you don't like heights, I don't recommend it. But if you do like heights, it's really cool being up there and observing from up high. And they had a walking bridge, and we went across that. He was very brave. I will say this, when he stood in front of the bridge, he goes, okay, I'm going to face my fear, and I'm going to walk across this bridge. Like he told himself, he said a few things during the vacation. I'm going to face my fear. I've heard him saying that, even like with basketball, something he was facing a fear.
I think he gets that from some videos.
He does, but it's good. He figures it out. He talks to himself, and he gives himself this power talk like he could do it. And he did. And so he also rediscovered his love for construction vehicles. And we saw a construction vehicle when we were up on the sky bridge on the other side. And then later that day, when we left there, we went to a new theme park in Sevierville called Diggin' Zone. You want to take that one for a minute? That was really cool.
Yeah. We just found it by driving by, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah, we had no idea it was there.
It's new. It just opened the month before in March.
Yeah, that's true. So we didn't really do a lot of research before we went on this trip as far as where we were staying.
Right.
Because we were just really looking to relax and stuff. But we drove by that, and of course he said he wanted to do it, so we had to figure out when we were going to do it. And they had a special running from 3 to 5 p.m., which is really all we needed was a couple of hours, and it wasn't crowded. And we got in, and they have like miniature excavators. They have a zero-turn lawnmower. Of course, it doesn't have blades on it. And they had tractors and...
Was there a bulldozer?
I don't think there was a bulldozer.
The excavator, they had a couple of games where you could pick things up, and then they also had it in the dirt, the sand. Yeah,
and you can knock things over. So all the machines are kind of, really cool. They're limited in what they can do, but they're perfect for kids.
And adults, actually.
Yeah, we had fun too.
They have them where the adults can get in and the kids can ride.
Because the adults have to pay to get in. So anyway, it was a great experience. And all the employees were just wonderful. And they even got out some squirt guns, and they let Bryce have a squirt gun battle with them, the employees. You know, I don't think they were supposed to do that. But Bryce had just a blast. And one of the things they had was a ride on a real excavator, but they had like... I don't even know how to describe it, but like a roller coaster seating, but it was connected to the arm of the excavator. So they all got seated in the seats. And so just picture where the bucket would be on the excavator. There's a line or a row of seats. And
that face front and back.
Front and back. And so they lift them up off the ground, and then the excavator spins around in circles, and the kids just love it.
Yeah, that was really cool. In fact, I've been doing more blog posts recently and putting them on our website, parentingautismshow.com. And I put some pictures and wrote about the Diggin' Zone. Or I'm going to. Maybe I put that in the newsletter. And that's another thing. I've been doing the monthly newsletter. I have kept up with that. And I featured the Diggin' Zone on that, and I'm going to share it on the blog post as well.
And if you'd like to get in on the newsletter, just send us a note at parentingautism@att.net. And just say, hey, I want your newsletter.
And then we'll get you added. So, so that was really great. One other thing from vacation, one other highlight for Bryce was, as far as like an experience, when we went to Knoxville for the bookstore, it was a rainy day. And that was the only scheduled appointment that I had with a buyer. And we went, and I looked to see what was in Knoxville, and I saw the building that was originally built for the State Fair back in the early 80s. And I saw that it had an elevator, which would excite Bryce, but it also had a large gold ball that Bryce called the gold disco ball. And we didn't tell him that would be there. And so that was a nice surprise for him.
What's it called? The Sun Dome or something?
Sunsphere?
Sunsphere,
now that you say that, yes. And I didn't know when you were up there that we'd be able to see the University of Tennessee, the Volunteer Stadium, the whole campus of UT, and it's got like a really pretty park area around it. Again, we just had crappy weather that day, so we didn't get to enjoy it to the extent that I'm sure it can be enjoyed. But it was still a fun little highlight for Bryce.
Yeah.
So those were a couple of the things that we did while we were there that we were going to share with listeners. And then camping was a really big deal. And we stopped in Asheville. That was our other stop after Greenville, was we had a planned night to stay in Asheville. And you two went camping while I camped at the Comfort Suites Hotel.
Yeah.
And I actually met up with one of our listeners who I've become friends with. She's another Christian autism mama. So shout out to Carrie. And I said, hey, I'm going to be in your area. Do you want to meet up for dinner? And she came and picked me up, and we ended up shutting the place down after 4 hours of conversation.
Wow,
it was
that's
fabulous. So it's really neat how this podcast has brought me several friends in different states. And now that we're able to travel, I get to meet some of them. So it's really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
But anyway, go ahead and talk about your camping experience.
Yeah, so Bryce wanted to camp in the forest. He said he didn't want to be at a campground. So I was looking around, and this is a part of the trip that we did plan. And I found a campsite that was in the woods, and it was part of the national park system. But they did have like different campsites all grouped together. So it was kind of like a campground. You did have like a pad to put your tent on and a little fire ring. So I thought that would be good. I really couldn't find a backcountry campsite that we could hike to and set up our tent anywhere close to where we were going to be. So I thought this would be ideal. And then, I mean, we ended up packing the truck. I mean, half of the stuff was camping gear.
It was full.
It was full to the brim. And Bryce, he was just so excited to go camping again. This is his second time camping. And he just kept talking about it. And I was just, my heart was filled because he wanted to get out into nature, and he likes that. You know, it's calming for him. And so I think you came with us to the campsite initially because the hotel was about 20 minutes away or 15 minutes. So we said, well, you can't check in yet. So why don't you come to the campsite, help us unload, help us get the tent set up.
And I'm glad I did, because I was able to see what your setup was and where you were going to be, and that there was a sign warning you about bears.
Yep.
But it's okay. I was putting faith in the Lord that there would be no bears like pawing at your tent. Because as we were leaving, the manager there said, yeah, there has been a black bear spotted here.
Well, he said there's bear activity at the campground, but they haven't put eyes on the bear. They could tell by
close enough
what was going on. Yeah. There was a bear somewhere nearby, and they said, don't leave your food out anywhere. So we said, okay. So we got the tent set up, and then we took you to town, and we came back, and we had some firewood. The camp host was, sold us some firewood so that we could cook our hot dogs over the fire. And before
and your
that,
marshmallows.
Yeah, and our marshmallows, yeah. And so before that, it was still daylight out, so I wanted to take advantage of that. Bryce had some new hiking poles that he was very excited to use. And so we looked for a trail, and we found a trail. It was a short trail, but it crossed a little river. And so we went on that hike, and that was super fun.
And then, you got in the water, right?
Yeah, not on the hike. We came back, and we put water shoes on, and we went down to the river, and we got into the river. And
he loved all that.
Yeah, so we were throwing rocks down the river and splashing. He fell in and didn't complain about it. But he's like, oh, the water's so cold on my feet. And I'm like, yeah, it is cold. But he really enjoyed that. And then we came back to camp, and we got our fire going. We laid out our wet clothes. How
were the insects?
I don't think there was any insects.
Great.
Yeah. Maybe after or as the sun was going down. I don't know. It was like 8 o'clock, I think, when the sun set. But we got our fire going. We did our hot dogs and marshmallows, and we played a round of Battleship on the picnic table there.
I love it.
And he really loved that. And, I taught him we needed some kindling for the fire to get the fire started. So we searched for branches, dead branches, and I had him break the branches up into little pieces to help us start the fire. And then we found, I saw some seeds on the ground from the oak tree or maple tree. I don't know which one it was from, but it was those helicopter seeds. And I said, Bryce, do you want to plant a tree? Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, how do we do that? And I said, well, I showed him the seed. I said, this is, we're learning this in school.
Yeah.
The trees drop the seeds and they go into the ground, and then a new tree comes up. I said, so we can plant the seed. So we found a nice little spot to plant it. So stuck our finger in the ground, and then we put the seed in, covered it up. And so he was really excited about that. And I think he even told somebody that we planted a tree. And so it was a great experience. There was no cell phone signal. So it did feel like you were away from it all. It was very peaceful. We could hear the river as we went to sleep. And it was was quiet, right? And we had a nice moon. And so then probably, I don't know, about midnight, I heard the rat-a-tat-tat on the tent.
Oh, was that midnight?
I don't know.
I thought you came around 3 or 4 in the morning.
To the hotel?
Well, you came to the hotel at 6, but I thought it didn't start raining till 3 or 4.
Maybe it was later, my memory. So anyway, we heard the rain on the tent, and Bryce was having a hard time going to sleep because we usually sleep with white noise at home, or an air filter purifier thing going. And so he's like, Daddy, I'm having a hard time sleeping. So I kept, giving him suggestions on, listen to the river, think about this, think about that, or whatever. And so he finally fell asleep, and then it started raining early in the morning, and it was a hard rain, like a hard rain. And so it woke him up. He's like, Daddy, what's that? What's going on? And I said, that's rain. It's raining. And so I don't know if I had the rain fly set up correctly on the tent, but there were drops of rain coming in. And the reason I knew that is because they were falling on my face, and they were cold raindrops. And I'm like, okay, it's pitch black. Bryce had fallen back to sleep. So I'm like, if it's dripping on my face, where else is it dripping? Right. So I'm like, is the floor wet in the tent? Is all of our stuff getting wet? What's going on? So I got up, and I think I had to use the restroom anyway. And fortunately, they did have restrooms there. They weren't outhouses. They had toilets. So I grabbed the umbrella, went to the bathroom, hoping that Bryce wasn't going to wake up while I was gone, because he would have freaked out. Daddy, where you at? And so it was just, 10 yards away. So I just went over there, came back, and opened up the tent, and I'm looking around, and yes, it's, it's starting, things are getting dripped on, things are getting wet. So I laid there for a while, and it was still getting dripped on. I would switch positions, and then I'd get another drip. And so I'm like, okay, this is, it was 46 degrees. And I'm like, this is not going good. And so I woke Bryce up. I think I took him to the bathroom, and he's like, what are we doing, Daddy? What are we doing? I said, we're going to go to the hotel where Mommy is. Well, what about our tent? What about our tent? And he was, he's a trooper about the whole thing. He wasn't complaining at all. And so we got our basic things together, got in the truck, cranked up the heat, and there was no way I could tell you that we were coming because we didn't have any service.
I know.
And so so we got to your hotel, and I was like, oh, I need a key to get in because it's so early you wouldn't be up. It was like 6 o'clock. So I went to the front desk, and I said, look, me and my son, we were camping, didn't work out so good. My wife is here, and I need a key. And I was wondering how that was going to go over, like, oh, yeah, right, you're really her husband or whatever. But
I hope she at least asked for ID.
Actually, he didn't.
That's not good.
And so he gave me a key, and we got into the room.
Oh, my goodness.
And so then I think we laid down and got some sleep.
You were able to sleep. Bryce was pretty wound up.
But it
worked out well.
It was a great adventure. We went back later in the day, and I think it was still drizzling.
It was. You had to check out by 11, but it was sprinkling.
Noon.
Or was it noon?
We had to check out by noon. So we checked out of the hotel at like 11.
We went right over to the
campsite.
And then
over to the campsite, took everything down. So then we got to the cabin. I laid everything out so it would dry, and it all worked out. It was an adventure. It was fun.
It was. And when we would ask Bryce, like, tell us 3 of your favorite things, camping was on the list every time.
Yeah. It was really fun. And we did they had a airplane museum right down the street at the local airport, the Gatlinburg Airport, really small airport. But they had a hangar there full of airplanes and it was
some good history stuff.
That was fun.
It was.
Yeah.
He talked about that, and then I also forgot we did the deer farm petting zoo.
Yeah, he really liked that.
And
that was his top 3.
Yeah, he would say that one, and that was also near right down the road from where we were staying in Sevierville. But I got to pet a zebra for the first time. I had never touched a zebra mane before, but they had camels, and it was just different exotic type of animals, and then they also had pony rides or horseback riding, but since Bryce does that for equestrian Special Olympics, it wasn't as big of a deal for us.
They had ostrich, huge bunnies.
Largest bunny I've ever seen in my life.
And they give you food. You guys went in and fed the deer.
Yeah, Auntie Sue got in food.
They just crowd around you looking
Bryce
for
didn't
food.
like that a whole lot because he did not like the feeling of wetness from
The
animals
slobber.
on his hands.
Animal slobber.
But he got used to it with some other things, and then if he could hand them a food, that was better. But don't eat out of his hand. He was not a fan of that.
And that was like 2 minutes from our cabin, so that really worked out good.
So everything, again, we had so many great experiences. So we had a great vacation, and then we came home with the sickness. So the Lord slowed us down a little bit.
For sure.
But he was well enough, thankfully, and you were well enough, even more so, that we could go to the Special Olympics this past weekend.
Yeah.
And that was basketball state. Only 2 of the athletes from his basketball skills got to represent our county, and he was one of the 2.
Yep.
So it was a really big deal, and it was a great honor. And so we went up Friday morning, and he got to compete that day, and I think that's more for qualifying. And then the next morning on Saturday was when they did the final competition, and then they give the ceremony, and Bryce was so excited when he got the gold medal. But he was also such a great sport to his friend that he met, Trey. And what touched my heart most was when Trey got his silver medal, and then Bryce looked over him and said, "Great job, Trey."
Yeah.
And that was extremely unprompted, all Bryce.
And Trey came into the second day saying that he was so excited to see his friend Bryce.
He's like, "Hi, Bryce." Yeah, and his mom told me he talked about Bryce all night. Bryce this, Bryce that.
That was so special.
So I said, they find their people, and they really clicked. And I got their information so we could stay in touch. And it was just a really, really great experience. And the coaches were great, and the family travel was. So we were super happy about that. So, and then Bryce had ordered yet another large stuffed animal. We told him this has to be the last one. He wanted a big teddy bear now.
Yeah.
So the bear delivery was delayed. It was supposed to come before we left. And so it arrived while we were gone. So when we came home, the big 4-foot teddy was here, and he did pay for it out of his money. But he was so excited, he kept going, "My teddy's here, and it's my last stuffed animal." Like he knows. Yeah. But we put his medal on the bear.
The gold medal.
Yeah. His coach had suggested that. And I'm like, I love that idea, actually. Oh, you did. Sorry.
Yeah.
Take credit.
Yeah,
Chris suggested that. I love that.
I said we're going to run out of room for all of his awards. I said we ought to start putting them on as stuffed animals.
That's what you said. And I'm like, that's genius because I need to put them somewhere. So now his giraffe is wearing basketball last year. And he loved it. I didn't tell him I was doing that. And I put the 5 medals that he got from gymnastics on the elephant. So she's representing gymnastics. I say she, whatever. Yeah. And he got such a kick out of that. He's like, look, she's wearing all my medals. I'm like, those are all your gymnastics. Spotty's wearing basketball from last year. Teddy's wearing basketball from this year. So it's really sweet. Yeah. He's got such a fun I will say this too, because imagination was something that we weren't sure Bryce would have or not because of the literal aspect. And he is still very literal in lots of ways. But his imagination is really taking off. He's understanding pretend. He's understanding if he's being tricked or, he says, are you tricking me? Or things like that. But he's really starting to figure some of these things out because we're trying to tell him that. And that's also something cute. But anyway, I don't know why I said that. Something made me trigger. But let's go to just real quickly about church. And then we'll talk about the OT, and then we'll wrap this puppy up. Yeah,
before you go to church, well, it kind of has to do with church, but the worship music. Now, we can't explain it, but he has found some worship music that he really loves by C.C. Winans, right? His most current love of worship music. For sure. And we put that on in the car, and he puts the iPad down. And he listens to every song on that CD.
He knows the words.
And he is just like in a trance, just like in awe of the sounds that are coming out of the speakers. We can't explain it, but it's just, it calms him so much.
I think it's his form of worship.
I think it is.
I really do.
I mean,
he loves it. He knows the titles of every song by song number. He knows what the words are. And every now and then I'll say, sing it. And then he'll try to do it. And then we just bought her new one. So we had the one that Greater Than No Greater Love. That's what we've been playing. And then I saw she had a new one that just released this year. So I got that and I started playing that. And he is already so smitten with that. Yeah. He's so happy between the two of them.
It's just, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes.
I tried to tell you. I know, because it's usually me and him.
I wouldn't believe it.
I'm like, he loves it. And you're like, wow, it just really puts him almost in a trance. I'm like, he loves it.
It's so relaxing for him.
And then actually today, for the first time, we tried playing a couple of songs together. He was on drums and I was on piano. And we had so much fun with that.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
And Cece was here in South Florida near us. Yeah, and we didn't get to go. But I'm going to have to maybe make that happen because somehow it's pretty cool. But anyway, having said that, so church, while we were away on vacation, we got a note from our pastor. And he said that he was going to have a sermon about being made in God's image and how all people are created for special reasons. And he had thought about Bryce, and he really wanted to share some of Bryce's story and some pictures of from Special Olympics that he had seen that we posted on Facebook. And I was like, we won't be there, but yeah, absolutely. So we sent him all of that. And I saw our friends that go to church, Krista and Michael, and then they're like, they had Bryce on the big screen and they talked about him. I said, yeah, I heard we're waiting to get a copy of the message so we can see it. And then Krista's like, and Pastor Josh got really emotional. I said, he said that he cried like a baby. But it was just very touching, And so what happened afterwards is we got a text, and I got this picture of somebody's house. And he shared with us that there's a member of the church who really has a strong heart and passion for the children who have special needs. And he actually painted his house with pieces of puzzle representing autism, all different colors, and he adds different names to his house. And after hearing that about Bryce, he added Bryce's name to his house.
Yeah.
And we have a picture of that.
So we got to find the house.
I know. We're waiting for that
out.
address.
Yeah.
I know. Well, we were sick too, so we couldn't go. But now we're ready to take Bryce to show him this house so he can see that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, to me, it's just once again how God uses our journey for positive things and to touch people and to bring him glory. And so when you wonder sometimes why did things go the way that they went? Why did Bryce have a stroke? Why did Bryce have autism? Why does he have all these other diagnoses, ADHD, blah, blah, blah? There's a reason. And if it's to bring God glory, I think that's why he creates us all ultimately. It's just our way we've figured out now. So anyway, that was really, really special to come back to that.
I want to plug Special Olympics again. I feel like I want to plug them anytime I get a chance because that's the picture that we sent Pastor Josh of him doing Special Olympics. And if you want to find your people, Special Olympics is our people. They're from all walks of life, all ages. I think Bryce started when he was 8. Different diagnoses, and they're all just super friendly, super happy to be there. It's just a terrific atmosphere, no matter what sport you're doing,
It is. And the coaches and the volunteers.
Yes.
And even the volunteers we don't know when we go to these different events, they have the best hearts, and everybody's happy to be there. And it's very
truly
joyful.
Remarkable.
I agree, 100%. Okay, therapies. So, ironically enough, we were talking in the past couple weeks and said, I think you brought it up and said, you know what? Is it just me, or am I just the only one that's not seeing that there are other, like Bryce is the oldest kid. We don't see any other kids his age when we take him to therapy.
Right.
Why is that? And I said, well, I think it's because I know with speech and language, a lot of kids start early for different reasons that have nothing necessarily to even do with autism. And they kind of work their way through it and graduate and don't need it anymore. It might be the same thing for OT. And then a lot of kids go to school and they get speech or OT there. And so they don't have private sessions like we have. I thought that could be some of the reasons, and I'm sure some of those apply. And then when I actually asked his therapist about it the other day, she said it's our time slot too because we homeschool. So we go earlier in the day, and a lot of their older kids come later in the day, like
they're in school.
After school. Right. And so anyway, regardless, Bryce has been in speech and OT for about 8 years now. He started 8 years ago, actually. And other than a brief break that we took when he was in VPK at age 4 to 5, he's had private sessions. And we have seen him improve a lot, which is what you want. You want to see him progress. And I've seen him progress quite a bit in the past year. And I think sometimes when you switch therapists, it's good. It's like switching teachers in school. They all have different teaching styles. And so it's been good for Bryce to have different therapists to work with him. And who he's had this past year, they've been great. With the speech and language, I know they've done it, and I've mentioned before, they take him around from room to room. I think it's helped him with conversations a lot. They've been fabulous. Does he still need it? Yes, he does. And he's definitely got a lot of goals that he's still working on. And we had talked to his occupational therapist, and he just has one at this time. And she's really been working with him on a lot of different deficits that he had. And she thought that he was actually going to be able to go to maybe 2 hours a week instead of 3 hours a week, because she was feeling confident in how much he had improved after his 6-month testing. So usually she will do the testing once a year, but because his plan was about to renew, she wanted to go ahead and do it after 6 months. So he was tested in December and hasn't even been 6 months. Let's call it 5 months. And so she's doing testing again. She honestly thought that he was going to test higher, but surprisingly, he actually regressed in a few areas. So when you get the call, can you see me so I can go over his testing? Sure. I really wasn't expecting it, but as soon as she started talking, I saw what was happening. I could tell, and it like flashed back to IEPs.
Yeah.
When I used to go in there, and then I'd have to look at the numbers, and it would show that.
The IEP. Let me tell you how bad your student's doing.
Well, and they say it in the kindest way, but you're looking at it, and they show where he is with his age and where he should be. And he would be dragging about 1.5, maybe 12 to 24 months behind, depending on what it was, right? Mm-hmm. And then, I'd start to cry because you have to kind of...
Reality.
Yeah, it's like a reality check. Okay. So this is the first time I've had it in a while. I had it last year when he had his speech testing, and I remember like, I know he's doing better. I'm so grateful, but it still is like a punch in the gut sometimes when you see it like, oh, he's scoring very poor on everything. So this time he didn't score very poor on everything. However, there were some concerns. And to his therapist's credit, she needed to bring this to our attention. And she said, I'm not saying this is because anything is happening with him neurologically, but I know that you've been taking him to the neurologist annually and you are watching for seizures. And she didn't use that word because Bryce was in the room, but that's what she was saying. And that's a sign of any regression is supposed to be a red flag for us. Mm-hmm. But we're looking at it together. And she said, I had the other person, doing the testing. She was actually training somebody with Bryce. And she said, the lady goes, maybe I did it wrong. And Brittany's like, no, you didn't. Maybe I calculated it wrong. And Brittany went through and she's like, no, you didn't. I mean, this really is how he tested. Brittany said, maybe he was having a bad day. I don't know. But when she started going through it with me, I will say that it didn't seem as severe when I saw it. I believe that the fine motor precision specifically, I showed you this, he had to fold corners of a paper and then the center of the paper. He was way off. It was not even close to precision, but that was 5 strikes for him, and when I saw the other things, I'm like, well, it's like a percentage. So say you take a quiz and you just blow one section of it, but that represents 50% of your test, then you're going to fail your test, right? Even though it was really only one area of the test that you didn't know, but you knew everything else. And then when I saw that he went from, I wrote these numbers down so I could go over them. He went from 10.3, like in December, he tested at his age, 10.3. He dropped to 7.6, like a 7-year-old. And it's like, whoa. But again, is it because of that one section completely? So I have yet to do it, but this week I'm going to do some more. I'm going to actually have her do the creasing one more time, or I'll do it with him just to kind of see, like you get that second chance.
Well, you can just take a piece of paper and do it.
I'm going to do the
lines
because she gave me pictures. So I'm going to do it at home and just kind of see where he's at on that. Then it wasn't just that area. His upper limb coordination, like in perspective, when he tested from July to December, he tested in a positive way from like age 6 to age 8.5, right? So he improved that much with her really focusing and having that as part of his goals. Then she said after he did so well, she changed some of his goals so that she could focus on other areas where he was struggling, and she couldn't do everything, so she took some of the other stuff out. Well, he dropped from 8.9 down to 8.0. So instead of increasing, which it should be increasing like a 1/10 for each month that you are in age, right? So you want a little bit of increase or at least stable. He declined on that. Why? Because she wasn't working on it. But is the stuff not sticking with him that he's learned? Those are just like questions it's redundant, but we don't know the answers yet. And then Bilateral coordination, I saw the improvement from 5.8 to 7.3. And while that still is not great because he's 10 and a half, it was still, that was a big jump. But in the next 5 months, he only improved from 7.3 to 7.6. So even though he didn't decline, it's like his improvement really halted, right? And then the last thing that was concerning was his balance dropped from 10.9 to 6.6. And she said a lot of the things where he struggled was when he would try to do things with his eyes closed. Mm-hmm. That was much harder for him. And so bringing back Special Olympics for a minute, at the state, when Bryce gets to go to that, they have healthy
kids.
It's called Healthy Kids?
I think so.
Healthy something.
No, not Healthy Kids.
It's not Healthy Kids. But anyway, it's
Healthy Athletes?
Healthy Athletes, that's it, babe. So they have healthy athletes with different areas. It's fabulous for all of these families and especially the adults with special needs because they can have things tested for free that they don't normally get to have done. Vision.
There must have been 100 stations set up.
Yeah, your feet, your balance. But I took Bryce to a few of them because he wanted to get a prize. But also, this particular one I was curious about because they were testing his balance. And it was like for physical therapy testing. And so I said to her, he's having some balance issues, so I'm curious how he's going to do with you. And he did good overall, but she did confirm that when he was trying to balance like on the one leg and with his eyes closed, he's struggling. So we know he has areas that he still needs to improve in. Am I worried about seizures? I can't say that I'm feeling worried about it. Am I glad she informed us? Yes, I'm glad she informed us because as good parents, we need to know that stuff. And as a good therapist, they should always make parents aware of that. But I don't know. Mama gut, I don't think it's because of seizures.
I don't think it is either.
I just think he doesn't retain.
I think these tests are important. And I'm trying to take it in stride and look at Bryce as a whole child and how far he's come.
Yeah.
Even in the last year and his overall competence and abilities, right? Mm-hmm. And so in that respect, I feel good. I probably
agree.
feel great.
Actually, I do too. It's been a really great year for him in so many ways.
I think we are going to get setbacks and hiccups along the way, and it is good to know these areas that we can work on, and being a great OT that she is, she recommended some activities that he can participate in that will help him, and we'll go from there. It's difficult to hear, it's difficult to see, but yeah, I think
I didn't cry till yesterday.
Yeah,
so it took a few days.
You just have to put it all into perspective. I think he's doing wonderfully. He's advocating for himself for the first time, more and more in the past 6 months. And his speech his interactions with people is so much better.
At that Healthy Athletes, he was asking questions,
yes,
answering questions. Because
yes.
they ask a lot of questions, and I didn't answer for him unless I felt he didn't understand it. And he did such an amazing job.
And I think, there's a few things that contribute to his ability to have conversations. Excuse me. I think it all started with him playing with Auntie Sue on the iPad. Mm-hmm. Because Auntie Sue doesn't live near us, but he's able to speak to her on Messenger live while they are playing a game on a Switch or on the iPad or whatever. They're able to talk while they're playing.
It's like FaceTime.
And so she started out with him, I don't know, it's been years now, playing with him like that. And,
weekly.
And he has to talk to figure things out, right? Mm-hmm. So that, I believed, helped him immensely. And then when we discovered that his best friend, Michael, was on Roblox, and that the games that Michael was playing were not violent and extreme and all that. We told Bryce that it's okay, you can play these certain games with him. And when they get on, they're telling each other what to do, where to go, and it's all great speech that's coming out of Bryce, and understanding of what to do, how to do things, and it's just, there's so many aspects of that have helped Bryce. So, if you can find a friend out there to where they have a common interest in that type of situation, I think his speech really blossomed there. And then lastly, his current speech therapist, she had a great idea to, as part of her lesson, to take Bryce to around the building or the office where they are,
the different
and
rooms.
talk to the different therapists and interact with the different kids that were in the room. Like you go next door and you say, "Hello, Miss So-and-so, how's your day going?" And by her doing that, Bryce started to automatically ask people how they were doing when he was approached or when he approached somebody. And so we're really seeing that blossom, and I'm just so thankful for those key people that have helped him along the way. It's really great. And like I said, overall, I think he's coming along great, and I don't want to... You need to focus on what's going on, but I don't want to focus on the negative scores.
Well, and I want to say that
I don't want it to bring me down.
that is what his therapist told me too. She goes, do not get hung up on those numbers. Look at if they're higher or lower. That's the only thing that we need to look at.
Right.
And don't get hung up on how much higher, because progress is progress.
Right.
But when we see a significant drop, yes, we need to look at that, and we need to focus on that and revisit those and put those back in the plan.
Yeah.
So, no, she was very clear about that and encouraging, because I'm sure, she doesn't want to freak me out. But I'm sharing that because I do think, like I said, we had the conversation of, why do you think he still needs it after all this time? And then God made it really abundantly clear why he still needs it.
Sure.
And we're not going to drop back to 2 days. We'll keep it at 3 days. And you know what? Eventually, Bryce may be able to go to 2 and go to 1 and graduate from it.
We'll cross that bridge.
But for now, he definitely still needs it. He's definitely benefiting from it. And it's worth our time. It's worth his time. And it's really been good. Only last thing that was coming through my mind as you were talking, I want to share this because I had a listener reach out to me who recently found our podcast, and she was very concerned about her daughter making friends. And she's at that age 5, which was so difficult for Bryce, I remember. And that's when he just started figuring out friendships like with Michael and Gian. I remember that. But Bryce has very much been... He just gravitates more to conversations with adults. And I think that's because adults take the time maybe to explain to him things. And he's with adults most of the time who talk to him like therapists and, family members and things like that. So that's where his comfort level has been. But as he's gotten older, he has become more comfortable with talking to some kids. Michael is definitely the biggest exception, but I felt like when we went this weekend specifically and he was able to talk to that little boy, Trey, and initiate it, Bryce would not have done that 3-4 months ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like major progress.
When we went on the Young Eagles flight a week ago, he went up to another kid that was going on the flight, and he says, "Are you going in the airplane with me?"
That's fantastic.
I mean...
Yes.
I didn't even know he was going to do that.
If
But he
Miss
did it.
Brianna is listening, she will be cheering because she works so hard with him. And we've kind of taken the ABA reins and working with him, to help him with this stuff. And that's why we have him in Special Olympics. And that's why we have him signed up to go to Minsky Gym once a week. You know, it doesn't matter if there's 1, 2, or 3 kids there. He's getting opportunities to be around other people besides us and engage, because we don't have him in a regular school setting. But it's good, and you just got to know to make what decisions to make for your child, because every child's different. You know, they don't come with a manual, but it's kind of play as you go.
Lastly, we started 5th grade this week.
Yes, we did.
Or last week.
No, it was last week.
We eased in last week.
Yeah.
And he advocated for himself. He's like, Daddy, this week, can we just do 1 subject per day? Because it's going to be hard, and I just want to do that. And then next week we'll do the whole thing. I said, sure.
Yeah.
And so we started out last week, one subject, and then today was our first full boat 4 classes, core classes. The core. And he did really well. What I'm finding is, and what I didn't remember from school is that they basically go over the same subjects, at least in social studies, science, and language arts. But they add a little more each year, right? Math, you're just building on what you've learned from previous. So we're reusing our beakers and cylinders in science, you know,
Great.
And we're recapping a lot of the stuff. And so in language arts today, we had to read a story. And you know how when he sees a page full of words, he gets nervous.
It's overwhelming for him.
It's overwhelming for him. But the teacher read the first part of the first chapter. And I think that got him interested, because it was about a bad dream, and he's familiar with bad dreams. And so I said, okay, it's our turn to read. And so this page came up with, I don't know, 100 words on it or something. And I was cringing, but he started reading it. And I'm like, wow, he's really doing good with his pronunciation that you've been helping him with.
I was going to say, and I'm helping him get books with more words on it and having him push through, but like 5 at a time.
Yeah. So he gets done that page, and we go to the next page, and he's like, Daddy, I can't, it hurts my eyes. I can't read this anymore. I said, what do you mean? He says, it's blurry. He said, it's not blurry on my iPad, but on this screen it's blurry, and I'm looking at it, and it ain't blurry. And I'm like, okay, well, step back and see if it's less blurry. So he stepped back, and he's like, no, it's still blurry. It hurts my eyes or something. And I said, okay, well, step closer and see if it's not blurry. So he stepped closer, and he's like, no, Daddy, it's still blurry. And I'm like, okay, maybe we should get his eyes checked or something. And then we have a whiteboard next to where we do school. And we had some math equations that we did previously on there. And I said, is that blurry? And he says, no, I can see that fine. And then it just dawned on me that it's the contrast of the background that they're using now for this story. It's like a parchment color, so like a tan, sandy type of background and black letters. And it's doing something to his vision that is making it appear blurry to him.
Well, you know,
I know
been told
his stroke was
we're
in
going to
vision.
learn more about his vision as he gets older, and the more he's able to tell us.
So we're probably due back to see Dr. Coulter anyway for his vision.
That would be good for you to mention that.
We'll find out.
Because there might be a way they can specifically test color and stuff.
Yep. And I guess we already mentioned the book and the newsletter.
Yep.
And I think we're going to be doing some more YouTube videos, possibly on recipes and some other things that Bryce has been doing. If you haven't discovered our YouTube channel yet, it's Parenting Autism. It's got a puzzle piece as the profile picture, a colorful puzzle piece. just like our podcast. And so if you find that, you might find some interesting videos there. But yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to build on that. I'm not committing to anything, but I've talked to you about maybe doing some recordings of homeschool so that people can because I get a lot of questions about homeschooling too. I think that would be good if we can share some, like a day.
And cooking.
And cooking.
Yeah.
And possibly even Bible stories with the puppets, because Bryce has been asking for that. So those are some ideas. Now that I have some time to do these kind of things, I feel like we would like to expand upon that. So
thanks for listening today. I know it was probably a long podcast, but we had a lot of catching up to do.
If we can get on here more often, they will be shorter.
Yeah, we
won't have as much
we
to
always
say.
say that, but hopefully
But then it
we
takes
can.
a month, and we have to do an hour.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today. Sorry. I think it's time for me to get off of here.
Yeah.
And we'll check in again soon. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Have a good day.
Bye.